Thanks so much for joining us today. We've heard so much about property taxes in the lead up to this session. What's the situation in Shoshone County?
In Shoshone County, and thank you, Melissa, for having me. We were kind of a bedroom community to Kootenai County, which is seeing the same problems that Ada County does. We're seeing
With the growth and cost of living, right?
Correct. And being a bedroom community and very little public land, our inventories are low, and people in Kootenai County are being priced out of their homes. I think their average home sale is just south of $500,000 now. That excludes a lot of people from the market that want to be homeowners. So we see them moving to our area because they can buy more home for the dollars they do have, and or even buy a home. So we're starting to see our values increase dramatically. Last year we seen a lot of 20-30% increases in our residential properties. This year I'm gut feeling I'm pretty sure those are going to be 50-60%. We also had a lot of homes that were second homes that were being rented out have since sold. So in the meantime, we're seeing our rents dramatically increase. 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom house 2 years ago could be obtained for around $700, and now that's closer to $1,700 or $1,800. So
that's a steep price for a young family that would be looking for a 2 or 3-bedroom home.
Exactly. It's very difficult. My heart goes out to young people either looking to rent or buy a home, and our wages are going up, but I don't think they're going up in the same as our values. So.
And Shoshone County also has the highest per capita number of residents on the Circuit Breaker program. Can you briefly talk about what the Circuit Breaker program is for people who aren't familiar with it, and why it's so heavily utilized in Shoshone County?
Circuit Breaker program, or also referred to as the Property Tax Reduction Form, is a program that's funded by state sales tax, and it's for elderly, 65 and older, widow, widower, and there's some others, like prisoner of wars that fall in that. This year their income has to be less than $32,230 after medical expenses. One of the reasons it's so high count, we have a little over 2,000 people that receive the homeowner's exemption. Last year we had 647 people that qualified for the Circuit Breaker program. One of the reasons it's so high is that myself and my staff, who are fantastic, really push the program. We do outreach, we talk to people, and it's a small community, so word of mouth gets out there that it's a great program. Also, we have a lot of widowers, especially widows in our county. We're home large hard rock mining, and hard rock miners, they tend to die young. I mean, it's a hard on your body type activity, so it leaves a lot of widowers out there. And also we have a lot of people that love Shoshone County, and they've lived there 50, 60, 70 years. So.
Sure. And what are you seeing in Gooding County?
Over the past 3 to 4 years, we've seen significant increases in valuation, and it can be attributable to a couple different things. We're a little bit of a bedroom community of Twin, and so as people would get priced out of the market in Twin Falls, then they would start coming to the satellite counties, and that was how things sort of started. At the beginning of the pandemic, I would have predicted that property values would crash because I thought, people can't get loans, the economy shut down. I was 100% wrong, and we saw exactly the opposite happen. That it's a concept called Zoomtown, where a lot of people that are no longer tied to a physical workspace start searching for other places, and something like the Hegerman Valley then gets discovered, and we've seen significant increases in valuation, and we just started to track where people were coming from, because we all want to blame Californians. But that actually represents only about a third of the people moving into Gooding County, and then about a third are coming from Ada County. And so I think that in rural Idaho, we're definitely seeing this disproportionate increase in valuation that we're not prepared for because of inward migration from outside sources.
Do you have any idea how many people might be asking for hardship exemptions this year?
Not yet. With the passage of 380, that's what put the 125% valuation cap, 125% of the median home value valuation cap on like the circuit breaker program. And so this is a created crisis, and I can't accurately predict how many will apply for hardship because we haven't had a situation where people were being kicked off of the circuit breaker, the property tax reduction before. And I think it'll be significant. In Gooding County, last year we had 380 circuit breaker applicants, and of those, 57 would not make, it's about 15%, would not make the 125.
And that was House Bill 389 that was passed last year. That was the controversial property tax. And there were a lot of provisions in that bill. So about 15% of people, if that stays in place, would be kicked off the circuit breaker. Do you know how many people in your county would be kicked off the circuit breaker if this stays in place?
I do. In Shoshone County, because we're a small county, I wait the counter along with my great staff. And so most of these, and being a small county, I know the majority of these people. Of the 647, we would have 91 that would be excluded from the program at the current level. So, and 44 of those are either widow or widowers with a single income. So,
when you're interacting with some of these folks who are trying to navigate these changes, are there any stories that you're hearing or situations that you're hearing that really stand out to you?
I mean, people are definitely concerned. I mean, these are, for the most part, long-term Idaho residents they've been here their entire life. And to some degree, they're the foundation that our state was built on. I mean, you can't look at our current economic prosperity without looking backwards to the infrastructure and basically the stones that were put into place in order for that to happen. And so that's one of the things that I believe is disappointing about something like the 125% cap is that the valuation changes are not the fault of the people that are suffering from it. I can't think of any stories in particular, but I believe Jerry has some.
I do, and my mother-in-law, for instance, Pauline, great lady, worked hard her whole life, her and her husband. When Frank was working at the mine, he made really good money. For the work they do, I don't think it was that good of money, but so they built a nice home, and they lived in that home many years. So Frank passed away, leaving her with a single income, and her home is in that bracket. She makes, after medical expenses, around $22,000, so she gets a benefit to help her with her property tax. And when the legislature called that an asset, that really upsets me, because these are these people's home. They don't consider it an asset. They don't care whether that home's worth $50,000 or $5 million. This is a home they want to live in the rest of their lives. And then I have a cousin that's in the same boat, and I have a lot of friends that are in that boat that they depend on this program. It cannot thank the state enough for having this program for our senior citizens. Of the 647, I would estimate that half of them would not be in their homes without it. So that 125% would affect, those 91 people. Now, if they would raise that up to 150%, that would affect, we'd still have 45 that would be eliminated. And there was a bill introduced by Representative Shepard for that, also with a $300,000, whichever was greater, they would be excluded. Of those 45, there's 17 widowers, or 7% of the program. Now, if they'd raise that up to 200% that Senator Bayer introduced, it would leave 8 people off the program. And the problem with the 300% is we'll fast exclude that this year when our values increase. So it's these people. We use a hardship when they come in for a hardship. We use the circuit breaker program to help with that. The commissioners will bring them to our office. We'll explain what the circuit breaker property tax reduction is, and often get them on that program. So it cuts down on our hardships that our local property taxes would pay. So we use that as a tool. The commissioners will a lot of times forgive penalties and interest and get them on a payment program and then get them on this program, because this program, in the old days, you used to put in the newspaper, you used to put on the radio, and you would get a lot of people. But there's so many forms of communication now, it's hard to find those people. AARP does help us out. I mean, they do articles on it and stuff, and they're a great resource. But I think a lot of counties, they say some counties 50% is underutilized and stuff. So
just from people not understanding what it is,
and
right?
choosing not to sign up. One thing we're seeing is a disproportionate number kicked off from smaller or more rural counties, and it has to do with the nature of averages. Someplace like Ada County, the average is based on all properties that qualify for a homeowner's exemption. So if you're in a county where there's a lot of those properties that qualify, especially on the upper end, then your average is higher. But if you're someplace like Lewis County I think is losing almost 20% of their circuit breakers. And the reason is because the top values and the lowest values are not that far apart. And so the situation is that if you have somebody on 1 acre in like a newer manufactured home in the county, they're getting above that 125% because the median value is so low because the top is so low. And so I think that this definitely disproportionately impacts the smaller and the more rural counties.
And this is assuming that the bill that was passed last year stays in place as is. This would be the first year that we see that. From a policy perspective, what do you hope lawmakers do?
Myself, I would hope that they would change that. They would, it needs to be, the number I prefer is 200% of median value. And that, the intent of the law was to make sure that no one was gaming the system. And I don't disagree with that. I mean, that's any system like this, there's always some people who want to take advantage of it. And so in order to keep people from gaming the system, it may be appropriate that there is a limit, but the 125% as a limit is much too low. I would prefer to see 200%. And it's, go ahead.
Oh, I'd love to get your thoughts
I
too.
would love not to see any percentage on it, but the 200% would get us there. I think the reasoning for this, Justin, and him being our legislative chair, was that people would sell out in other areas for millions of dollars. I mean, it wouldn't be unreasonable to see a home sell in San Diego for $1 million. Have those people move here, buy a $500,000 home, and put $500,000 in the bank. Those people can and should pay for their property tax without a benefit. And I think that's what the program was for. So I think the $200,000 would probably more than likely take care of that problem for the most part. You would still have some abusers, but I think any program with benefits, a social program, you're going to have abusers of the program.
But that's not the majority of the widowers and the people you're seeing take advantage of those.
No, I mean, just like in my numbers, I mean, 15% are over that 125%. And so 85% is under it. And they're, they're not living in nice homes. I mean, some of them are living in, $2,000 manufactured homes. And those are the people who need the help. And then when you hit that because it's income based. I think that there are a number of people that the valuation is going to kind of end up pricing them out just based on the 125%.
And then where do they go? I mean,
Yeah, they can't replace it.
right. And we don't want to lose these people. I mean, they're the backbone of our community. They are not burdening our infrastructure in any way. They don't require very many services. I mean, most of them drive a 1990s vehicle that they put on 1,000 miles a year, and they're just proud people. I don't think you'd see a lot of these coming and asking for a hardship because they're just too proud to ask for a hardship. So with this one, in our county, we get some people to sign up because I tell them it's funded by the sales tax. And these people pay sales tax every time they go to the grocery store and stuff, so they're kind of funding it themselves. And so then they feel better, and they don't look at it as a social program. It's more of a helping hand than a handout to them. And that's very important. They're very proud people. They just need a little help, and they deserve a little help.
Yeah. Well, and one issue with the hardship is that the valuation and the taxes that would be removed from a hardship is a tax cancellation. And so the valuation gone through, the budgets have been set, the levies have been set, and then you're pulling money out of those taxing districts with a hardship. And we've seen that quite a bit with extending the homeowners exemption deadline. There's quite a disparity and quite a bit of money that's being pulled out of those taxing districts that's already been levied for and already been collected. And that brings uncertainty to local taxing districts because they base their budgets on a certain amount, but then they almost have to keep a fund back in order to accommodate tax cancellations, which has previously not been near as big of an issue.
As the legislative liaison for the assessors in Idaho, in your experience, are lawmakers receptive to these concerns that you're bringing up?
Sometimes, not always. There's a bit of a disconnect. I mean, that's one of the things that's complained about probably the most is that there's a perception outside of the Treasure Valley of the state of Ada, and where everything happens in Boise for Boise, and so there's naturally a little bit of a resentment there. And then I think also there is a disconnect between state lawmakers and state policymakers and the people that are administering those, which is the local county officials.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there. Justin Baldwin, Gooding County Assessor, and Jerry White, Shoshone County Assessor. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.